no living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the NESARA components, and we're going to talk about a future view because in a little while, hey guys, I don't know the date. I wish I did know the date, but when this thing comes about, we are going to kind of show you some of the things that are actually going to be a part of it. Coming right up. Okay, so I'm going to show you a whole bunch of banners as we go along here. And so, for instance, the first thing that does absolutely have to happen is an EBS EAS. EAS, emergency broadcast signal, emergency action signal. Okay, so we have to have the military take over because the media is just telling you lies. Social media has to be taken over so that we can hear the truth. And there are three main points that always have to come. We have to tell about child trafficking. We have to tell about election fraud, and we have to tell about the COVID fraud issues. Those are the three main points that I personally have deemed, those are things that we got to deal with. Now, you might want to hear about a million other little points. Those are probably real effective, but those are three things that have come up over and over again that we actually have to address so that we can push forward through this. And what happens inside of that is that we have the Brunson message that will wash out all Congress, Senate, and presidency. It washes out everyone. And you're going to see like people going, whoa, what just happened? Now, I know a lot of people are focusing on, the trials and, the Gitmo kind of stuff and everything else like that. And I understand that point. And that will be kind of exciting for a lot of people. But again, while that's for more of the normies, and maybe it's exciting for you, you need to be really focusing toward the future. That's what faith is really about. And as soon as that's happening, this is what I want you to think about, because you already know some of this stuff. You already know what's pretty much coming out there. I mean, there's nothing like a newsflash to you necessarily. There might be tidbits for you, but the reality is the people will need to be calmed. And that'll be one of the first things I think that's like on the docket. I think military are going to be walking around in the streets, and they will be wandering through circumstances, neighborhoods and streets and areas, just being out. I don't see full on lockdowns. Some people talk about that. I mean, we might have that in locales, but that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't see it more than 3 or 4 or 5 days or whatever, certain amount of days, because the reality is you can actually present the messages, and you got to keep doing it over and over again. Now, here's the second one. The second point that I kind of feel like is you have to end the nation's debts, okay, or the debts of the nations. Specifically, each of the nations have a debt. Britain has a debt. Canada has a debt. Now, what is the debt? Now, let's just talk about America's debt. For instance, it's one of the easiest ones that people talk about. And it's hard to identify Britain that it has a debt, or Spain that has a debt. But any country who has a central bank has they have placed the government in debt to it. And so you're going, really? Yeah, every single nation has been placed in debt. And it's the three-letter agencies. You see, Washington, D.C. is the governing agency of all of the cabal kind of things. The London agency, the City of London, is the banking kind of center of that. And the Vatican was that religious center. And that's why people kind of get the misunderstanding of, the mark of the beast, that they're the beast. They want to be, but that's not biblically correct. It's a whole longer topic that I actually deal with in my tribulation series that we get into. But we have to end the nation's debt. Now, how do you do that? You basically go, we're not paying it back. Now, you don't go into bankruptcy. You just say it's not payable. That's what Executive Order 13818 says. It says that foreign debts, and it goes through this, that if you have a criminal circumstance, meaning you have crimes against humanity, your debts are not payable in essence. And so it goes through a lot more than that. But that's what Trump talks about. And what he's doing is he's calling upon the 14th Amendment under the fourth section. It says that foreign entities, the debts that foreign entities might place upon the American public are not payable. Central banking is a foreign entity of the Fed, of the banks of the central bank. So, for instance, the 13 central banks are all foreign entities. We've known that for generations. They actually fully admit that. And what the real Constitution, the Constitution for the United States, not the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the United States is the one that came up in 1871. Now, I'm going to have a person that's going to come on. We're going to talk a lot about that one. That's the fake Constitution. Trump actually re-signed the Constitution for the United States, which is the original one. This is for the people, by the people. And what it does is it in essence, constitutes the new republic underneath this banner point. And it says, hey, listen, the 14th Amendment actually is in vogue because it came out, and I want to say it's in 1868. I don't have the exact date off my head, but something in that range. And it says foreign debts are not payable. And that's actually what we're going to do through all of the nations. And so they're just going to go, sorry, we're going to thumb our noses at them going, we aren't going to pay you back. We're not going to give you $34 trillion. Sorry, sucks to be you. I'm walking away. Next. Again, this is not in perfect order. Education of the quantum financial system. The quantum financial system is not central bank digital currency. By the way, Trump just yesterday, today is the 20th of January, and just yesterday, Trump said, we are not going to allow central bank digital currencies. So many people are so freaked out about this. The reality is central bank digital currencies are done by the cabal through the Great Reset and through the bankers. They want that. They want to control the monetary system. That will not happen. It has no place inside of the quantum financial system. The quantum financial system, and we talk about this quite a bit, but the quantum financial system has already been set up. It's been set up for potentially for about 3.5 years. It's been activated for a long time. And you're going to learn about this. You already have it set up for you. You don't have to go out there like fakers. We have a ton of fakers. We're using my face and a whole bunch of other truthers' faces out there and saying you have to sign up some crypto crap. You have to sign up and do that. You do not have to do that. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Do not sign up with anything for the QFS because it's already set up for you. Just like you have a credit report, just like you have a social security number, it's already set up for you. And you're going to be transported inside of that system. It's not a bad system. All it is a blockchain system made for you. You are the trustee of your own system. You have all the control. You see all of your own accounts, and you are outside of their systems. Again, that's only a portion of what happens, but the world will have to have ongoing, continuing education on it. And by the way, it's much more simple than you think. See, the systems of the world are much more complicated. I mean, when you try to like sign up for things, you notice like how difficult they are. I mean, there's this thing that audiologists have to do, this thing called CAQH, right? And I mean, like, they change one little tiny thing, and the CAQH thing is just so nightmarish to go through. And guess what? The QFS is simple. If you can use an online banking, you can do the QFS. That is over and over and over what we've heard. The people have gone through that kind of training. And so you're going to find it's much more straightforward. And it's made for you to protect you. And there's going to be a physical currency and a digital currency. It is under the Treasury Department. It is none under the Fed. It is called the US note. It is gold backed. It's not QFS. It's not XRP. It's QFS, gold backed by the Treasury, constitutional money. The first section of the Constitution the first article under the 10th section says that you pay your debts by gold and silver. It will be a constitutional based money done by Congress through the Treasury Department. That's how it's supposed to work. Next, deportation of illegals in the nation. So for instance, and we'll talk about America for just a second, but you know that places like Sweden have just been massively infected by, different nations coming in, especially Muslim nations coming in. And they're just crowded by these people that are coming in, and they're illegals to the nation. We're not talking about legally coming into the nation. The UK have had this. Spain have had the same kind of thing, and America is going through the same problem right now. The NESARA, GESARA kind of thing, what it will be is saying, listen, you want to have the quantum financial system available for you and the debt forgiveness kind of things, you're going to have to go back to your own country. And they're going to be like, yeah, but I want to have it in America. Well, sorry, but you are not a legal resident of America or Spain. You're not the legal resident in the Congo or whatever that is. You have to go back to your original country. Simple. That's just what it's going to be. Sorry. So that is how it's going to be. And so, and by the way, illegal resident, I mean, illegals are coming to a country illegally. Now, we're not talking about someone who's maybe been here legally for a very long time frame. I would walk up to that person and go, hey, you want to be here? You want to be here legally? Sometimes they're just trying to get out of the IRS taxation. And by the way, through the QFS, they could just be here legally. Be here legally. That's the whole point. But you're going to see a mass deportation, especially of these last, couple years, which are, basically an invasion level kind of thing. You're going to see a very, very heavy one. And a lot of people are very upset about this, but don't misunderstand this. They have tagged these guys with little things on there. So there's a tagging that's been happening to these guys. Maybe they've given them a cell phone or a tagging thing around their wrist, which is a GPS tracker. They know exactly where these guys are. They can just go and pull them and bag them and get them out. It's a real simple kind of operation. Number 5, real elections. I mean, so many people have looked at the elections, and we can talk and talk and talk about elections, but I don't want to get into that because YouTube will get real mad at me. But I want to talk about elections, paper ballots with GPS tracker that we know that is tied to me, with a photo ID. I mean, by the way, in Oklahoma, I have to walk in with a photo ID and show my ID, and then they look, I'm on the roll, and that's where I can't just go anywhere to go, vote. It's not, it's not like race based kind of thing. Anyone has to, you have to have a driver's license to, drive a car kind of thing. It's a normal kind of thing. And when we have paper ballots, there's a scanning kind of process. You'll see the quantum financial system, the QFS, actually has a way for this. NESARA actually talks about this. NESARA has to have real elections, because if you don't fix the elections, they will just keep coming right back in and changing everything. So you have to wash the people out of there and get the real people really elected. You think that you know who is good and who's bad. You got to wash them all out. It's going to be top to bottom with that. And along with that comes an introduction to constitutional law. The Bar Association is the British level of admiralty law. It has slowly been infected in our system for a very long time frame. And when you look at this, and people ask me these questions all the time, like, what about this and what about that? Well, first off, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But the point is that when you look at these legal issues, it's so much more simple. When we go back to constitutional law, we basically rip off most of these areas. Most of the admiralty law is based upon precedent back and forth. Like Judge A makes a precedent, as if that was a just precedent, and then the next guys will use that precedent as a possibility, as if that was a just precedent. And so he uses that precedent, and then all the other boys underneath him will use that precedent to keep that case going. And they force feed the system underneath precedences like this, and no answer why that precedent was made. And so it's a system built to keep the governmental system in place. This is why you have to kill off the Bar Association. So you have to retrain the judges and the lawyers under constitutional law. And frankly, it's just more simple. They have to go backward and into a constitutional basis. And so you have to understand justice versus fairness. Okay, things are never going to be fair. They never have been fair, but you need to have justice involved in here. Okay, and so you're going to see a lot of upheaval in there. Okay, it's not going to be simple and easy on a lot of that. But that's why Trump actually brought in hundreds of new judges. Even though you don't feel it right now, that is part of what he was doing in his first term. It's a lot of the interesting points that happens. Now, as those real elections happen, as we have constitutional law that occurs, the states will be reforming their authorities and their rights. For instance, Now, and I'm not going to get too hard into this one, but the IRS is a criminal organization. The 16th Amendment is just an illegal organization. I mean, situation. It was never meant to be there for a long-term issue. And so those are the kinds of things that have to be wiped out. And they feed the cabal system. Okay. And once you see those kinds of things go away through the QFS, they just wash out. Now, there are things like property tax. People ask me, number one area. They go, what about property tax? And I say, well, property tax is a state issue. Some states, and I want to say, at one point in time, I mean, I want to say Oregon didn't have property tax, and I'm making, I can't remember the exact thing how it worked, but I think it was like Washington State and Oregon State. There's a border there, and there's Portland between them. There's Portland and Vancouver, and so some people will live in Vancouver, for instance, because what they want to do is get away from the property tax. But that's what it is. They live in Washington State to get away from the property tax, but they drive down into Portland in the Oregon area to get away from sales tax to buy things. So states like that do these kinds of weird things. And so you have, but they try to make up for taxation by other ways. These are a state issue, and so we will see that states actually truly make their money by sales tax. Okay. And there will be actually a federal sales tax for only new items. I don't want to get into that. That's another conversation all along. But as we have new elections, it has to go all the way down to the mayor level, to the school boards, and we'll talk a little bit more about this too, and all the way down to the small levels, which means you need to be involved. You need to be involved in reforming those authorities, reforming the rights of the states, because they have to have the rights in a republic over the federal government. The federal government has to have less and less things. There are about 10 to 15 different rights that the federal government does. The rest of them shouldn't be done by the federal government with them. There will be independence from other countries. What does that mean? And every country is independent. I've seen people say, well, Mexico will merge with America. No, I don't want to see Mexico merging with America, or Canada merging with America. That's just not good. Canada has never been on her own. She's always either had Britain or America being over top of her. This is a rich land who has oil, has some gold, has plenty of farming land, has potential to do all of her stuff on her own. Can't she be on her own for the first time? How about Australia? Australia is a beautiful land. Why can't she be on her own? Instead of being, they started as a prison territory for Britain, and then they broke off from that kind of thing. But they've always had someone on top of her, and they've been threatened by China and other kinds of areas. Why can't she be on her own? And that is actually what GESARA is about. So we're going to start finding is that each one of these nations are going to have their own currency, their own quantum financial system, and their own independence. And they're going to have their own basis upon their QFS and their independence. So they're going to find their own footing upon their financial systems and their own capability. So, for instance, America has oil reserves and gold and other kinds of abilities to do, but so does Mexico. Mexico has her own abilities too. Maybe not as big as America, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, Honduras doesn't have to be. She needs to live within her row. Okay, and just that's and make sure that the other nations don't come over. Now, there's a next part that actually is a part of this. It's called ending foreign wars. Now, this gets confusing for some people. Sorry, let me take a drink. Because they take it to what they think is a logical conclusion of it's 1,000-year millennial reign. Well, by the way, that's a biblical term, and 1,000 years of peace. And the answer is that's not what that is. Millennial reign is actually a biblical term. It's listed in Revelation 22. It's listed in many different points in the Old Testament. But that only happens when you have a real tribulation, which we have not been in. And I can go through that. I mean, there's 650 verses that have not been involved yet. And there's 300 verses that aren't available for that to happen. So we're not in the millennial reign, and we will not be in the millennial reign when NESARA GESARA occurs. But one of the keys of this foreign war kind of issue is that the point that comes out there is that in GESARA, It says that, don't get jiggy with your neighbors. So Iran, you might have issues with Iraq, but you know what? Come to a table and have a conversation. In essence, that's the whole point of this. Stop getting in wars with one another. And the reality is, guess who really wants you to get in wars? It's always been the cabal. It's been these upper tier idiots, the elitists, the morons. And I know some of you hate it when I do that, but they're Satanists. Okay, I'm not going to call them anything but what they are. They're Satanists. All they want is wars. That's what Satan loves. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. Guess what? We're not going to play his game, and by the way, that will only be for a time frame until the tribulation occurs. But it ends those foreign wars. You're going to see them come to an end pretty fast. Now, there's a lot of humanitarian funding available for rebuilding. Some people have mistakenly viewed the humanitarian funding that is available, and it comes from a couple different pools of money. Number one, it comes from who I call the anti-cabal. You might call them the white hat families. These families have had monies for a very, very long time. Sorry, I'm arrowing down here. For a very long time, and they have set these funds up, such as the St. Germain Fund, as the Rodriguez Fund, and a whole load of other funds. And some people think, well, I'm going to get all of my money back, or I'm going to get all my IRS money back, or I'm going to get my bond money back. And the answer is, if that happened, what would occur is no one would work, no one would do anything. Everyone would be millionaires, and what would happen? It would raise the prices of everything, and it would artificially inflate everything, and that would just be horrible for systems. Donald Trump actually talked about this, and no one pays any attention to him. He talked about he would build new cities from scratch. Now, he's not talking against, for instance, Detroit or Philadelphia, but what he was talking about, what about a new city in Michigan? Make up a state or area. What about a new city that people could go, and that there would be massive construction there, so that people could have great jobs, and we can start from scratch instead of the decaying, rotting kind of capability in some of these cities that are just barely making it, that have been there for a long time, but it would just take so much to get them really going. Whereas you could go to a new place and kind of go, hey man, we can really build in that kind of area. And he actually talked about it. He has many kind of little tiny videos, and he's talking about, and you're not paying attention because you're not seeing some of the rebuilding that he's talking about. And that's the humanitarian funding that he's giving answers to. And there's plenty of money for this. And they're looking at this for a lot of years down the road of humanitarian funding. So they need that money to be able to do that. And they need that money for, for growth of people, because there's another part of this. It's called job development. And so me as an employer, as a business guy too, I think about job development as well. And I think about adding jobs and capabilities, and people who have business kind of background, we think about job things. No, we don't want to have people just have jobs to flip burgers, but we want to have great paying jobs. And if people are entrepreneurial in nature, man, do that. But maybe you're a person who is a job developer. Maybe you're a person who goes, man, I want a job developer. I want to be able to build a house, but I want to work for someone to build a house, but I want to be paid well to do that, or whatever that might be. But that's part of the humanitarian building. So again, the humanitarian building, this would lead to this kind of funding to be able to have the job development. And then it leads to the next phase of supporting your local businesses. Instead of, having the great reset kind of people and the gross idiots of the huge areas like to have massive megalopolis kind of businesses. What big businesses tend to do, and I've personally watched this in my field of audiology, what they do is that you'll see a town, and I personally have watched this when I was repping for a hearing aid manufacturer. There was and I want to say, I remember watching the town of Lubbock. It was one of my, Texas is my territory. And so in Lubbock, there were these independent hearing aid dealer audiology places, and they're all independent. There was not one, corporate facility. Okay. And there was a guy, and I want to talk about him because he's actually gone out of the area, but he wanted to come in and do it. He wanted to take over the Lubbock County area. So what he did is he comes in and he bought out a facility, and then he undercut the pricing of everyone. So he undercuts the pricing so that no one could compete with the pricing. And so that everyone had to start steadily dropping the pricing. I mean, it was massive undercutting of pricing. And so he dropped the price, everyone dropped the pricing, and then they couldn't compete with him. And then when they just started falling by the wayside because they weren't really great run businesses, but they were really good people who cared about the local economy. He just either made them just go away and hired the person to work in a facility that he started up, or he just bought them out, wiped them out, and then raised the prices back up to that same level. This is how they do it. And so they're so bad at competition now when they've done this, when they've eaten up all the competition. We need to go back to local support of business that is a value-based business that is related to a gold-backed currency. When you have gold-backed currency, the value is in the money. So the value will be in the service that someone can give. It's not just the product, just giving the product, give me the product kind of thing. See, that's what a fiat currency actually tells you. Just give me the product as quick, as cheap as possible. That's not what it will be. It'll be it making a breakfast as good as possible. It's good tasting breakfast, or good made shoes that fit me, that I can, fix those shoes made right for you kind of thing. That I look at the clothing and look at you and say, and measure you and say, that doesn't fit for you. Let's do this one. That doesn't look right for you. Let's do this kind of thing, and all that kinds of thing. So you supporting your local business will actually come into vogue again. Shifting gears, we have new education. I mean, the education part, NEA, has just been ugly. And you've been seeing this since 2020. There's been a concerted effort by the White Hats to show off the school boards and how disgusting they are. They have been going over so far to the left, and parents are going, I'm sick of you. In Colorado, there was one place that the school board up and quit. And then the people were standing, and I was watching this video, people were standing around, well, you be chairman, you be on the school board. And they were just picking chairmen like that. And it was like, okay. Or board members, and secretary. And I'm like, I mean, it was really interesting. And I think that kind of thing is going to happen as we get back to real education, reading, writing, arithmetic kind of stuff. We need to see that kind of stuff. We need to get back into real teaching of real material. We also need to go deeper and deeper into understanding the right kind of stuff that's out there. Now, I'm going to skip over this one here. I'm going to move it up to 15 here. I'm going to do something here real fast here. Sorry, just to tell you this one. Sorry, I'm changing as we speak. You're kind of going, what are you doing, Scott? But those education things, we need to teach the kids correctly. Now, some of it will be homeschooling. Some of it will be private schooling. Some of it might be public school because people can't do that. But I think you'll see a huge population of homeschooling, and a huge, and we homeschooled all the way through. Hey, I don't care what you do. You choose what you want to do, but that's the thing. You choose. You're the parent. You have the choices. See, the NEA and the school systems, they wanted to choose for you because they don't think that you're capable. And that's just bah humbug. Get out of my way. Parents have the ability to choose for the kid. And the kid has to learn, has to take the leadership from the parent. Simple. Simple. It's so simple. It's not funny. Now, we're also going to see new funding for really good movies and documentaries. I mean, no more are we going to see these woke movies, because guess what? The woke movies have already been dying off. I mean, they have been losing money. Do you know that Disney has lost billions and tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars per year? I mean, you can't keep doing that kind of thing. And it's actually a clever white hat thing that they've been just letting them push out to their ultimate kind of goal, and just to be as stupid as possible. And what they do is that they're so far out to the left, they think that they're out there, and see, they're so far with it, and they have no connection to real people. And what happens is that no one shows up to your show, and you put 500 $50 million into a movie, and you make 30 million off of it, so you have a negative $20 million off of the movie, and you can't understand why no one wants to go to your movies, because you just made Rocky 34, and there's nothing creative out of it. And you're going to see creative movies that will come out. But the reality is we're going to see, because we have had, and going backward here, we have had so poor of information based upon, you know, the QFS. We'll need to have understanding of the QFS. We'll have to have an introduction of constitutional law. We'll be talking about real elections. I'm kind of going backward over here, some of these areas. Independence of this. We'll see foreign wars kind of thing. What we're going to be talking about is saying, okay, fine. And because we're going to come up with new education, we're going to go back. And I know I was going back and forth over those areas there. But what I'm going to say is we're going to probably redo documentaries. You're going to find the Titanic isn't what you think it was. World War I isn't what you think it was about. The Korean War wasn't what you thought it was about. These wars, especially Vietnam War, had much more about to wipe out the economy of Vietnam and take them away from their status and their capability, their ability to be in the GESARA status. They have a rich history and take the gold and silver out of their country. That was what Vietnam was there. That's why France was in there in 58 and why we still were in there until 74. Think about that for a second. We were there. I mean, the cabal was there for like 14, 15 years. Like, how can you be in a tiny little country that can't really defend herself, north and south area, for like 13, 14, 15 years, that has backward weapons, and they had to do like horrific level of fighting back and forth, and you have big countries involved with this? Why? And do you know that the baby boomers, the young baby boomers at the time frame were protesting the war, and they were right to protest the war. Why were we there? But it was wrong to say, you know, the veterans who came back, treat them like crap. We should have been talking to the government and not the veterans that came back. It wasn't the veterans' problem. So we need to relook at all of those documentaries and relook at those areas. We need to look back at the Revolutionary War. We need to relook at War of 1812, the Civil War. We need to look back at 1871 and what the new Constitution was and how they messed it up. We need to look at Lincoln and how he really died and why he died, because there's a real big story out there with this. Last two, we need to have a transparency in healthcare and insurance. One of the major areas, and by the way, there's a ton of these that we can get into. And again, I'm not doing every one of these, but we need to have transparency in healthcare. We have done what we call a bundling system out there. Now, as a healthcare professional, I bundle.
Everyone wonders if earning a degree will really make a difference. It will at WGU. In fact, in a 2022 Harris poll, 99% of employers said WGU grads meet or exceed expectations. Employers respect WGU degrees. Learn more at wgu.edu.
And so I'm talking to myself just as much. But there's a reason why I bundle in this kind of way. But what they do in systems, and I'm just going to use my personal experience when I was in the hospital and my miracle healing. Let me just tell you the transparency that doesn't happen and what occurs. So I'm in the hospital with a very severe illness in December 22nd, or basically walk in December 21st, 2019, and walk out late the 24th, Christmas Eve. 3 days in the hospital. They go through every test that you can kind of go through, man. I mean, everyone's trying to figure out why this guy is not right. Severe strokes, every other kind of thing. If you want to learn about this, it's fascinating. And the bill comes back with like, and I'm blanking the exact amount. I think it was $128,000. I remember seeing it the first time. Now there was a trash can right here, and I almost wanted to puke in the trash can. But when I saw what the insurance, United Health Insurance, so we're going to talk about that, United Health Insurance had knocked it down to $24,000 basically. And they paid everything but like a $1,300 deductible that I had to pay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm like thanking the insurance in essence for knocking it down. But think about this for a second. The hospital has to charge $128,000 just to get the $24,000. I mean, that's monopoly math. And the insurance, but if you don't charge that, the insurance won't even give that to you. And by the way, that's a whole conversation in and of itself. So the insurance companies and the healthcare companies are messed up. The hospitals and the insurances need to go through the washer and dryer. We need to we need to put them through a transparency like nobody's business, because the end person, the end provider gets 9 to 10% of every healthcare dollar you get. I mean, or every healthcare dollar you spend for, we get, people like me get 9 to 10% of that dollar. 9 to 10%. 91% goes out to the hospitals and the insurances. That is why it's so out of whack. And so we need to see a transparency, and those vaccines and the COVID and all the other stuff that needs to get fixed. And you're going to see it because everyone's going to be mad about this kind of stuff. And so you're going to see that anger and that other issue that will come out in a dramatic, a powerful way, and see actually what occurs here. So we're going to see a transparency, and it's going to come like a freight train at them, because the EBS, the EAS will show off how bad they were. And they're going to come back to people with a tail between their legs. And they will have all their people already fired, all the top execs, and they're going to have this kind of response. And so will a whole bunch of other corporations, including most of the banks, most of the other kind of corporations who've done you wrong. And I'm not talking about the 3-letter agencies. And they will come back to you and going, please come back to us. Please forgive us for our stupidity. And the people that you will be talking to then haven't done anything. Okay, those will be the underlings down below that didn't really do anything necessarily. But we need to have them to go through a transparency point. And so, because we won't trust them, the trust level will be a negative level with this. And this is part of that kind of flush mechanism, because everything that they've done has been in the toilet. It's part of what happens. Now, it comes down to this last little point. And this might not be your point here, but this is going to be my point that I'm going to end with in this little 45-minute rant. But but here's my point. Because you see the people like HRC and Biden, Obama, blah, 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 all the big ones, and some of the other ones that you're going to find out the names of banks, of top ones, and all these other evil people. And you're going to see them judged on military tribunal kind of things. And you're going to say, and I've heard this said over and over again, that evil has been removed from the planet. And I say, you've got to be joking. Evil resides in the heart of men and women. It's here. It doesn't reside in one little person like HRC. She doesn't have the bank on evil. Just because she did evil doesn't mean she has the bank on evil. You didn't take care of evil by doing that. The evil is in the heart of people. Go read the book of Romans. It will tell you where evil is. It's here. You personally have accomplished evil. I personally have accomplished evil. That's what sin is. Okay. It's called harmatia. It's missing the mark. People have misunderstood what the Bible actually says. And I think that we're going to see a focus upon the word, the real word of God, which is those, you're going to hate, some of you are going to hate this, and I don't care if you don't like this or not, but the 66 books of the Bible with the 40 authors. No, the Vatican hasn't taken it and thrown it underground, because God has prepared it from the foundation of the earth. I've got plenty of evidence of why I believe this. And if you don't like that, you can skip off the channel. Okay, sorry, but I'm going to tell you right now, skip off the channel, because you're not going to like me. But here's my point. We're going to see people who are going to come back to the truth. It's actually predicted in real interesting ways all the way through scripture. People will be looking for truth, and they're going to be asking you for the truth. You need to be really open to say, you know what? Number one, why didn't you see it? It was there. Do you know? Let me tell you something. Do you know I put a little meme out there on Facebook of all these they were media and movie and TV and government officials, and there's a little meme of all these little pictures of people. And I said, these are all the pedos. And I mean, and now there's a person that I grew up with. I mean, I knew her in grade school. And Kathy, I've known her since that time frame, okay? Kathy got super mad at me. And she's very left-wing. And she was like, that's wrong. And she was talking more about Tom Hanks and some of these other ones. And she goes, you don't know this about them. And this is in 2020 when I was pushing this out there. And guess what? We're finding, these people are all finding out through the Epstein Island that all of this stuff is true. All of this stuff of all the same people that are pictured in that thing, that all of it's true. And those same people like Kathy needs to come in essence, come to Jesus and go, you know what, Kathy, I showed you back in 2020. I'm not trying to shove your face in it like we do with the dog. When I was growing up, we used to, if the dog peed on the carpet, you shoved the dog's, face in the carpet. That's just what you did in the time frame. I'm not saying you should do it now. I'm just saying that's what we did. But you shoved your face in, I'm not saying shove her face in the carpet to kind of push that at her. But in essence, I showed it to you. I told you that. You need to do something with that. You have to understand your denial is your problem. Once they come out of that denial phase and the anger phase, they can come into that acceptance part. And then they can kind of go, what is the real truth? I'm glad you asked. Let me share with you what real truth is. And I think that you're going to find people coming into real truth and rejecting evil. That's what this whole thing is really about. I really think we are going to have opportunities to share the gospel in ways that you've never seen before in the past. Focus on what the word says. Focus on that. This should be a point of hope. There's going to be amazing capabilities in there. Center yourself in prayer, and just be calm. Wait for it to come. Thank you so much. If you want to know more information, I actually have a book called Revelations of the Red Pill. It's in the background here. I wrote it, now it's like 2 years old. But the reality is, it's actually relevant to today. It's what we're dealing with right now. So you can check it out on drscottyoung.com. Thanks so much.
Have you been feeling sad most of the time, losing interest in things you once cared about? You may be experiencing these and other symptoms that are difficult to understand. These symptoms are worth exploring with a doctor. Learn more about major depressive disorder and a potential treatment option at managingdepression.us.
First of all, just in the sense that when we see the symbols out today, the knowledge that's out here today, right? The information, there's a backstory to how it got here. And there was somebody who had to push and persevere, right, in order to deliver this information, right? I'm well aware of the ability now to wear the crown, but there's a, long history before 19 keys, right? So people outwardly wear the ankh and there's no pushback, there's no issue now. But when there was people like yourself in the 60s, when you was wearing that symbol had not been known and it was foreign to the mind, right? And, anything that was, not traditional, Catholicism or Christianity, right, was always opposed. And so I find that interesting because a lot of people don't know to recognize our elders for the privileges that we have today, which some people, may take for granted because you don't think about damn, I get to wear my symbol, but who wore it first, right? What did they go through to where I can now be comfortable and it's normalized, right? And so as we talk about this key, what does the ankh mean?
Well, to make it quite short, it's just a word in the Metuneter, now known as hieroglyphics. It's a word for life because it honors first the divine feminine principle. It honors the divine children, the divine father. You see, in our culture, Nut, heaven, is feminine. Geb, earth, is masculine. And the children, holy daughter or son, is the product of that comes out of the womb through the seed of the father. Now, there's many different interpretations because as many of our people confront this divine key, their ancestral memory kicks in. So they have different definitions of what this
memory.
Yes, hereditary memory. It's
by your, I know my understanding of it, but by your definition of just the term ancestral memory, with people because symbols are very powerful. I just talked about this episode with Joey Badass because he had some symbols and I wear my symbols, but like I said, symbols create a feeling in the subconscious, an inner knowing. It can, create a enlightenment in the mind just by seeing certain symbols and having a connection between what's in your DNA. And you may not know it, but you intuitively and instinctively have an understanding built into your genes. That's right. And so that's powerful. When we look at that symbol today, many people take it and establish to their own meaning. And symbols have the ability to be connected to whoever has it, their feelings. But then there's a root, right? And I know you are a person that just doesn't give anybody the ankh, right? You want people that actually know how to defend it, that know the understanding